Hey guys, I'm back. I have something interesting to talk to you guys about, and it's about lawlessness. And I want to share this with you, but first, I want to talk to you about the movie that came out in June 7th, 2013 called The Purge. So, now the premise of that movie was this: it was about an America ravaged by crime and overcrowded prisons. The government sanctions an annual 12-hour period during which all criminal activity, including murder, is legal. Now, I want you to understand some things, and I want you to keep in mind that the government sanctions this lawlessness, because that's what the purge was basically about. It was about lawlessness, and it was sanctioned by the government. Like, they actually made a law that made it legal to be lawless. Now, you have to understand, we live in a world that was created by laws, period. God follows his laws. Satan follows God's laws. But Ephesians 6:12, one of my favorites, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against spiritual wickedness, the rulers of wickedness in high places. We wrestle against spiritual darkness. We wrestle with beings that we don't see. And they have infiltrated the government. I mean, if you're not born again, you're not filled with the Holy Spirit, none of these things have occurred. You are under the rule of the wicked one. Even though when you are born again, you still in a place, you're learning to submit to God. And I got something to tell you about that too, that I realized. We talk about submission. It's actually being obedient. Submission and obedient kind of sort of run hand in hand, but I'm not going to hold a whole discussion about that, because this is about lawlessness. But obedience, submit. The word says submit to God. Be obedient to God, which is what caused the enemy to flee. Your obedience, your God, your every step that you take towards God and his laws. Because God ain't canceled out his laws. How about that? You know, if God canceled out his laws, that means what goes up continues to go up. We know the law of gravity, what goes up must come down. If God canceled his law, that cancels out that. That means we're left to be project into oblivion, and so on and so forth. So without laws, without righteous laws, not just any old kind of law, but without righteous laws, the people moan and groan. Not just having leaders in place that's going to make sure righteous laws are followed. So let's talk about lawlessness. We know that there were some riots. There was a lot of rioting and carrying on going on after George Floyd. So people decimated, destroyed police precincts. They destroyed department stores, grocery stores, small businesses. They killed people, and in all honesty, it was sanctioned by the government. Because the government said that because these people are quote unquote underprivileged, that they had a right to do this. They had a right. So The Purge, though it was a movie in 2013, became reality a few years ago. But that's not it. Gradually, the government, be it city, state, or federal, have gradually been making laws that counteract the laws of God and sanctioning things that is lawless. So we see it as, okay, this is the law. You know, the government, the mayor made the law, the governor made the law, the president made the law, you know, our legislation passed the law, you know. The law went through all the processes, the legal processes it's supposed to, and this is what stands. But the thing about it is that law stands against the laws of God. It stands against God's law. So it's lawless. We see it as a law, but God sees it as being lawless in actuality, because it's not his law. That's not something he sanctioned. So lawless is not regulated by or based on law. So we have God's law and we have man's law. But man's law is not all the time based on God's law, and we know that. We know that by different things that people feel that they have the right to. And I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to stay on lawless. Another meaning is not restrained or controlled by law. So if you make a law that's against God's law, it's not restrained or controlled by God's law, which means, you know, the other day when I said you're standing on shaky ground, you're standing on shaky grounds, because though man said you can do this, when you stand before the ultimate king, the ultimate judge, who's going to be the judge of his law, he don't care about what man did, especially when it doesn't line up with what he has said. It doesn't line up with his law. If God doesn't go against his own law, what makes you think that we mere mortals are not going to be held accountable? Example 1. In the book of Esther, Haman got the king to write a decree and seal it with his signet ring to kill all the Jews in all the provinces. So when Mordecai, Esther's uncle, found out what was going on, he went to Esther. Esther fasted, and then she went to the king. Now, first of all, she couldn't just go to the king, so that fast was necessary, because anybody who approached the king would be killed, even Esther. But and she knew it. This is all in the way they operated. So she fasted and she went before the king, and he granted her to come in, and she had dinner. Haman was invited. She disclosed, she had dinner twice. So she disclosed Haman's plot against the Jews. She also disclosed that she was of Jewish descendant. So because the king could not change the decree that went out, he allowed them to create another decree where they could protect themselves. They could, anybody coming to kill them, they can kill them. Basically, that's what it was. So, the king of all kings has made laws that he has not changed. But our government, being swayed by the wicked one, has created laws that goes against the laws of God. In actuality, lawlessness, allowing people to do what they feel like doing. That's basically what it is. So, other words for lawless is criminal, anarchical, rebellious, disorderly, and the definition of law is a rule of conduct or action laid down by a governing authority, and especially a legislation. Now, God is the ultimate and final authority of all things, period. Regardless if we like it or not. Regardless if we agree with him or not. He has the final say. So regardless of what man has written, or regardless of what man has done, or man has said, or regardless of what man has put into place, God has the ultimate, final judgment, authority, ability to send to hell, condemn, and everything else. That's all on God. See, we here on planet E, we don't have the ultimate authority. Satan does not have ultimate authority. He only can do what God allows. That's it. Bottom line. So when you begin to think about different things, think on righteous judgment. A lot of us don't, because we go by what we feel. We go by what sounds right. We go by this. We know flesh and blood, that's going to perish. That's going to the dust. So our flesh and blood, our flesh. I heard Creflo Dollar say this. I know I stopped saying what I was going to say, and I want to say this. I heard Creflo Dollar say something. It cracked me up, but it was the truth. And this was years ago. I mean, this has been almost 20 years ago. And he said, this right here is nothing but an earth suit. It's a space suit. For us to be in this planet. If we're not in this space suit, then we're gone before God. And he has made determination of our final destination. But as we're still in this spacesuit, it don't matter what color it is, because it's still going to the ground. It goes back to the dirt. So it does not matter the color. And guess what? We don't even get to pick the color of the spacesuit that we're going to inhabit until it's time for us to exit this spacesuit. We don't think about those things. Like, you might have some people to sit around, like me, sit around and think about stuff like that. But in actuality, we don't think about stuff like that, because we don't think about we're eternal beings. that was placed in a planet that already had rules, laws, and regulations, and then man came with his. And we don't sit down and rightly divide what is of God and what is of man. Because we just all want to get along. I don't care about getting along with y'all. I don't care if you like me or not. I used to. I'll be honest. I was a people pleaser. I wouldn't say certain things because it might offend somebody. I wouldn't. At this point in this time, I'm 71 years old. You get offended, that's your problem. That's not my problem. Because I don't think like you think. And you ain't trying to think like I think. How about that? I said it just like that. I'm trying to make sure and work out my soul salvation so my final destination will not be in hell, but be in heaven. So that means there's a way that I have to think that is not like the crowd. The crowd want to go get drunk. I can't do that. Because that might be my last day on earth. So I can't do that. So in other words, I can't go along with the crowd. I have to go along with God and his crew. Because when you begin to think about righteous laws, think about law and lawlessness. Creating a law where nobody has bail is lawlessness, because what you're doing is you're letting the person back out, and we have seen it. We have literally seen it work out, that when they let them out without a bail, they do something more heinous. When you create a law saying you can murder your baby, what you end up doing is saying, we can leave that, you can have that baby, and we can leave that baby laying on the table and let it die. More heinous. Because man's heart is wicked. The heart of man is wicked. Who can know it? Now, who would have thought that if we allowed this, then this would happen? Because we don't think that far. But God does. That's why he made the laws that he made. Because he thought that far. And we as men, we actually don't think that far. We're limited a lot of times in our thinking. Only because we have culture. We got the black culture, the white culture, the Indian culture, the Hispanic culture. Well, I'm of the God culture. Point blank. I've had people say, well, what about your people? What do you mean, what about my people? I remember when I first got born again, my next door neighbor, I used to sit out and congregate and have me some beers and all of that. And when I became born again, God delivered me from a lot of things. And I'm grateful because I'm still here. But my neighbor at that time, once I became born again, said, well, we ain't going to hang out. I said, let me tell you, my friends are doing what I do and going where I go. I'm going where they're going. My friends. So my friends, the people that I congregated with changed. Then the color of them didn't change, because where I used to live at, you would call it integrated neighborhood. So that means I had people whose skins was far more lighter than mine. and far more darker than mine. So that, when I became born again, that did not change. What changed was the mentality of the people. They were more God conscious than society conscious. And that's what changed. And that's what needs to change with a lot of people. Because when you see it from God's perspective and man's perspective, you're going to say, you know what? They've been creeping lawlessness in on us and we didn't even recognize it. Because you don't recognize it, you think it's justice and it's not. That's just what they tell you to go along with the I gotcha. With the voodoo, witchcraft that they placing on you, darkening your mind. That's what they do. But you got to remember, they're being influenced by beings that we don't see. Spiritual wickedness in high places. And that spiritual wickedness is on every level, city, state, and federal. Rich, poor, because the whole thing is, Satan wants to speed up his demise. In actuality, that's what it is. And God is trying to harvest souls. Satan trying to harvest souls too. But God wants to harvest some souls because there are souls that he have laid claim to, that he has to go through the process to become his. So I'm headed into another direction, but I wanted to talk about lawlessness, righteous judgment, righteous laws. So just know, this thing, The Purge, though they made a movie about it, they're actually doing it. And they're making it law. So we don't see that it is lawlessness. We see it as the law of the land. Because that's what they made it. They legislated it. They made it a law that this could happen. But it's actually lawlessness. So they're ushering in lawlessness. Okay? Think about it. Comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. And I'll talk with you later.